Welcome back. On to start with our first main topic for today. As we mentioned, we are going to talk more about the visit paid by President Abdel Fattah el-Sisi, talking about the tripartite cooperation mechanism between Egypt, Cyprus and Greece, and how important it is because definitely we have many points to be discussed in this respect. So first of all, allow me to welcome with us our guest for today, Dr. Youssef Mazhar, former Assistant Minister of Industry and Trade and also member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
So first of all, talking about the significance of this tripartite summit and how important it is, because definitely we have many sectors to be discussed when it comes to this respect.
Yes, it's very interesting because, of course, most of us have followed the news, but maybe in the program today we can shed a bit more light on the details of what went on. First of all, let me say that the meeting was a very large meeting. And if you looked at the news, you would have seen the number of participants was very high. Also because the number of topics that were to discuss were also numerous. And of course, many people know or have heard of the topics, but let us take some of them and discuss them. There's no order of preference, by the way. I mean, if we start with terrorism, it doesn't mean that's the most important at the time being. But definitely, terrorism is a big item now, especially that these three countries are grouped in what they call the Eastern Mediterranean. So their problems are very much related. Don't forget that I love to talk about the history of different countries. Don't forget that Egypt had a very large Greek community here, and that there are many Greek families living here, and Alexandria was well known, both historically, when Alexander the Great went through Alexandria and called it Alexandria, up to the last period when many of the businesses in Egypt were very much in the hands of Greek nationals. So there's a lot of good feelings in it. So, and also common interests. Now, what are the common interests between these three countries? Number one, this area, the Eastern Mediterranean. Mediterranean is a closed sea in a way. And anything that happens can affect neighbors. So it's very important that the neighbors agree on different things. Now, lately, when we talk about terrorism, we can talk about, let's say, groups of people who go out to do things that are illegal, forcing other peoples to abide by what they want. Terrorism can go into also immigration. And you know that Africa, as we look at Africa now, we are in the top of Africa. Egypt is at the top. We've got many seaports, and we've got Libya next to us. And there's a lot of migration that goes through Africa from, let's say, dark Africa or the middle Africa, and they go up to the shores, excuse me, the shores, and they immigrate, or they try to immigrate across. So to have a common policy of immigration and to stop this flow before it reaches Cyprus or before it reaches Greece is the biggest advantage to Greece. As you see, in this particular subject, Greece is overwhelmed, and some of the islands there, one particular island, is completely swamped. Now, if there's an agreement, and Egypt is in accord that it also helps with this flow, stops ships from leaving from here, inspection, so we will lessen the flow. So immigration is very much also in Egypt's hands and also Greek hands. Now, when you talk about Cyprus, I think maybe we should spend a little bit more time, because everybody says Cyprus is a small island. Cyprus, over history, was a very important place. I want to tell you that Cyprus had reserves of certain minerals known long time ago, like tin, for example. Nobody talks about that. But in ancient times, there was trade, and ancient Egyptian ships used to sail up to Cyprus and also what is now Lebanon to get woods and to get certain kinds of minerals. So Egypt knows Cyprus very well. Cyprus also has the misfortune is that at certain historical time they became two parts of Cyprus. There's one that is under, let's say, Turkish influence, and the other one Greek. Of course, this is a big problem. So now, let me say that the Greek side is the one that really is very advanced. The main port is there, the main airport is there, so everything is there. And don't forget that Cyprus is very well located. It has to the south, the North African countries. It has the north, the proximity to other things. Also, there's a large Greek community in Cyprus, of course. And common to all this is very large reserves, gas reserves. And you know, of course, we talk a lot here about Zohr, which is the latest big, let's say, gas field. And when you talk about a gas field, it means that you have also got partners that are non-Egyptian. You've got Italian partners, you might have partners who have got shares, etc. So the whole question becomes an international question. So with these elements, that it's a bit of terrorism, there's a bit of intervention also. Some countries are interested in trying to use force or trying to recruit, let's say, paid militias to do their work for them, even though they might not be neighbors. They might be out of it, but still they are not neighbors, and they will jump across the territory and take also recruits, take also, they could be terrorists, they can be volunteers, they can be anything, and use them as influences or to make disturbances in these countries. So this is another element now. How, and if you get together and discuss all these things, then you get a common policy. Now, common policy to who? If these three countries have got a common policy towards Europe, towards the United States, it is more or less a bloc, a very influential bloc. Now, what can they do together? Number one, certain things have happened over the years. Before, we used to think that our territory ends with the beaches of Alexandria. It doesn't. With all the new theories now, there's a lot of agreements that show that you can go out underwater and that our territory extends many kilometers into the Mediterranean. The same thing also on the other side. So that means there's common ground, and with this big, let's say, amount of reserves in gas, everybody is looking for the gas. Now, gas means...
Just if you allow me, because as you mentioned,
yes,
gas, I want to include in our talks talking about, we have the founding charter of the Eastern Mediterranean Gas Forum,
yes,
that aims at encouraging regional cooperation and, of course,
yes,
preserving stability. So I'd like to include this.
Yes, you must include it. I'm glad you brought it up. It saved me looking for the name. That's very important, because we were talking in general now, but if you want to get things done, you must have entities, you must have meetings, you must have an entity that has got powers. So you mentioned the most important one, and if Egypt and Greece took the first, let's say, step towards forming this and then asking other countries to join, you become a forum which has a lot to say. People will listen to this entity. Of course, it will have its secretarial, it will have its experts, it will have its connections. It's very important that, and also very important that it becomes based in your location. So I'm glad you brought it up, because this is, let's say, the way you translate the good intentions into working models. So this is something that the three countries talked about. And if you looked at what came out in the news, you will see that the delegates from each country were considerable. I mean, the tables were all across, and in Cyprus, I mean, it's not a very big country, of course. So each country brought its experts in gas, in oil, in tourism, in many things. So let's say tourism, for example. Don't forget that Greece is very well known for its tourism. And its islands, the Greek islands are very well known, and we have a lot to learn from them also. So if we can impress upon them that their way of getting tourism going, also to bring them over and share the Red Sea with many of the things Greece has in tourism. I went to Greece many times, and I was very impressed by the very fast connections with ferries, very special ferries that go very fast. And I was thinking, if we had these ferries going along from Greece, along the line, taking the whole of the Red Sea, I mean, you must take from each country what the best it has. Greece has the best tankers fleet in the world, the best tankers, and you know the names, that very famous names of tycoons, and they have a lot of know-how, and they go through the Suez Canal. So again, you have something very much in common.
This is what we are looking for.
Yes, I think politicians set up the systems, but I think for the businessmen, for the enterprising people, for the people in tourism, for example, when I go to the Red Sea, and I go to the Red Sea very often, and you take a car or you take a bus or you take a plane, why don't you take a ferry like in Greece? Greece, it's beautiful, these hydrofoils. The hydrofoils, they go faster than the traditional ferry. You know, we had ferries also in Egypt, but they were traditional ones. Let us start companies that have these elements also. So, and also, I want to tell you something that I'm not inventing. There are many Egyptian businessmen in Cyprus at the moment. There is a whole city where Egyptians can buy projects there and lands there, and this is private. So, excuse me. So we see that there's a lot to do. Tourism now, we've covered it a little bit. Transportation, the connections of the super tankers, facilitating through the Suez Canal, giving priorities, getting concessions from these tanker companies, using the techniques and the knowledge to build a tanker fleet for Egypt. That's also something that you can learn from Greece. The opposite is true. Egypt has got a very big population. That means it's a very big market. And anything that exists can go to this market. And we can get away from the traditional markets, let's say, which is Northern Europe or the traditional countries of the world, the United States, Germany, etc. And a lot of things will go along. Vegetables, we're very good at vegetables. Plants, flowers. There are many, many things, but you've got to think differently. And to have this forum, and it's very important that the forum is headed by the three leaders. And they have met constantly. I mean, if you listen to, this is the fifth meeting and this is the third to get together, and this, so it's a continuous process. Now, I'm sorry to keep on talking, but please interrupt me whenever you want. But having all these things common, then politically you are very much closed. And if anybody is disrupting this, immediately the common interests of these three will be together. And Greece has got tremendous connections in Europe. It's part of a number of European systems. And Egypt has its place in Africa, etc. So this is a, let's say, consolidation of power. I think that's for a start is, let's say, anything that you'd like to open up. I'm very Please do.
Well, definitely this, as we were talking before, even many people were talking about why the president was keen to visit Cyprus and to have these meetings and such tripartite summits taking place. Actually, as we mentioned, this is not the first time, of course, we all know this, but now it can show, or we all see now how important it is, and now it is creating a good power. When we talk about the three countries, as you mentioned, we have different fields to work in. We have the electrical link as well.
Yes.
If you would like to talk about it in more details, because definitely it is all like we are in one circle.
Exactly.
And many things are taking place, and definitely each sector has to move parallel to each other.
Yes, exactly. Let me just say one thing. Do you know that getting to Greece with a plane, it's 1 hour? I mean, not Greece, to Cyprus first. It's 1 hour. That means you get up and in 1 hour you're there. I, as head of the Egyptian Yachting Federation, we had a lot to do with Cyprus, and we had yachts, private yachts out of Alexandria, sailing to Greece, arriving in the same day. This is a private sailing yacht. And I want to tell you that Cyprus is a beautiful place to have harbors. And we have got harbors on the north coast. We've got marina. Marina itself means harbor. Now, if you link with the harbor marina and link with the technology and the visitors and the yachts that are moored in Cyprus, people will go and come. Marina until now is still very much a local. We are very much of a local.
As you mentioned, we need the expertise,
Exactly.
we need the know-how, and we need a lot of
Yes.
things to cooperate together in this sector in particular.
Yes. And instead of, now at the moment, many of our yachtsmen have taken their boats and left them in Cyprus. Why? There's no formalities are a minimum. The service is very good. So you can have joint ventures. You can give a part of marina to experts from there, or vice versa. So there's a lot to learn. Let us stop thinking that you have to jump all the way to United States, all the way to Britain or to Germany. There are lots of things which in this area can provide. So I think that the meeting, which had so many representatives, each one of these sectors had everybody who has got something to say on the three sides. Now, of course, politically, that's very important because having gas deposits in the Mediterranean, the Eastern Mediterranean, makes it very interesting for anybody to either to just cause trouble or to try and make a presence or just try to start problems. If you start a problem, you think you can get into something like, and some also parties even jump across the Mediterranean.
Invaders, we can say.
Intruders. and they jumped into areas which are neighbors to Egypt and cause a lot of disruption. So it's very important that these three countries keep very close together. Each one has got its power. Nobody has got anything more than the other. And even the size has nothing to do with it, you see, as you saw Cyprus. By the way, the port of Limassol is a very important port. It's a trading port. Also the airport is very important. And you can jump over to the North Africa, even to Israel, to any of the countries, Lebanon. It's just minutes away. So I think it's a very good combination. And don't forget, we are Mediterranean people. And you can say you're African, but don't forget, the Mediterranean people are very much identical. People in the south of France and the south of Italy and Egypt and etc. and Greece, they are very Mediterranean in the way they live and the way they enjoy things, etc. So I think I was very impressed by the number of things that came up during these meetings. Of course, there are many strategic things, like having a pipeline. If you exploit the pipelines and you've got your gas, you've got two things that I may mention physically. We have got a tremendous oil liquefaction facility in the north of Egypt, Damietta and Rashid. We've got two very large plants there, and if you get a flow of natural gas, you can liquefy it. And if you liquefy gas, you get liquid gas, LNG, etc. You can use them in buses, you can use them in power stations, and they are there. I mean, it's nothing, we're not starting anything new. And they were under capacity because they didn't have, they had to import the gas and then work them. And they were working. Now you've got a pipeline. So pipelines here, pipelines there, and then you need a market. So you need production, you've got the facilities. Where's the market? Don't forget that Europe gets a lot of its energy from Russia. And many of the countries in Europe would like an alternative. An alternative. If they can get this alternative here, safeguarded, and through Greece, a member of their different communities, then you've got these connections, you've got a market. So you've got an industry, you've got raw materials, and you've got a market. The formula is complete.
So definitely this is not only on the political level, but economic level as well.
Oh,
because
yes.
Definitely
Yes,
both are
definitely.
linked, and it proved
Yes.
that you can never achieve political stability without having also the economic
You've
stability.
got to have something to offer. I mean,
Of course, and this what was mentioned by the
yes.
international reports actually talking about Egypt and its economic growth and
Yes.
how Egypt was able even to confront all the challenges even during the challenge of the COVID-19, of course,
Yes.
and how still we are growing economically. So I would like also to discuss it from this point of view. If we're talking about the impact on economy in general and having all these projects and these different fields that Your Excellency have just mentioned, and of course this will provide more job opportunities, more spaces for projects to take place, whether mega projects or even talking about the feeding industry for such projects
Yes.
as well, and this is the most important part.
Yes, you're right. Look, yesterday I was listening to the Prime Minister. He had two guests. One of them was the very capable Minister of Industry, and she talked about all these industrial areas, etc. Now, this model, they have now got 13 locations along Egypt where they have got industrial estates, ready-made places. We've got a very good experience now. So if you have 13 or 17, as they will be here, where you make areas which everything is built so that people can move in and start working, if you take this model and talk to your colleagues in Cyprus, maybe you can make a 15th or 17th in Cyprus with the know-how. We have know-how, and we have also workforces. We have a large working population. So I think we should be looking at other areas. Even the health area, we haven't talked about it, but the epidemic now, I'm sure they have talked about it during the meeting.
Course, yes.
Of course, now we've got the question of vaccines. If one of the group has got an agreement on vaccines from anywhere, it can share it with another person. Maybe because Cyprus is a smaller country, it can't go and negotiate itself and buy large amounts. Also, hospital capacities can be discussed. There's everything. Once you get a system going and people talking to each other and differentiating between common enemies, common problems, and hoping that they will not continue like that, you can really have the advantage of numbers,
All right, at the end, Dr. Youssef Mazhar, former Assistant Minister of Industry and Trade, and of course, member of the Egyptian Council for Foreign Affairs. Thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you for your wonderful questions, which opened up many things I had not thought of before I came here. But I think we have complemented to a large extent what people have heard on the local news. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and still we have more to bring you. Moving on to a quick break, then we'll be back with more on our breakfast show.